Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Secret Listener, an ingenue in Mao's Court, by Yuan-tsung Chen. Narrated by Rebecca Lamb. Prologue. Opening Shot. I planned to write my memoir in Hong Kong, where I moved from the Berkeley Hills in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2010. But it was only a few years later that new events made clear to me what my approach to my own experience needed to be. In 2015, several Hong Kong publishers, which had sold books unflattering to the reigning Communist Party, were seized by China's all-powerful Ministry of Public Security and brought across the border into mainland China. These events opened old wounds, not only mine, but also those of others who had fled to Hong Kong, then a British colony, before it was restored to China in 1997. Large numbers of Hong Kongers, many of them students, stepped forward and protested. The party blamed the schools for not having taught them enough patriotism. The textbooks, particularly the ones about recent history, would be rewritten. And so, for example, on January 11th, 2018, the South China Morning Post reported that the People's Education Press in Beijing had published a new account of the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, the most violent of Mao Zedong's violent purges that would be read by all middle school students. This new patriotic history rewrote what none other than China's paramount leader Deng Xiaoping had described as a 10-year-long cataclysm, or haojie, in which 1.7 million people perished, according to the official death toll. The dead had wives or husbands, children or parents, siblings or cousins, lovers or friends. So how many more lives were ruined? That same event in the new version became the 10 years of arduous exploration and development achievement. This Orwellian rewriting of a history that I lived myself propelled me to look deeper into my memory. Much that had lain dormant there began to stir, and I understood that what was taking place around me now in Hong Kong had its prototype in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s in China, exactly the periods I intended to cover in my memoir. Perhaps I should try to explain this in more concrete terms. I was stunned by the new patriotic history for middle school students, but paradoxically also inspired by it, because it told me how to remember events that I had experienced. Half a century ago, I attended a giant rally in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. 1 million middle school students were there, in worshipful attendance on the Chinese demigod Mao Zedong, who stood on the gate of heavenly peace and rallied China's young people to his violent and disastrous cause. I went with a group from my neighborhood association and stood on the edge of the crowd. I saw the staged performance of a young acolyte, about 12 or 13 years old, sliding a red guard armband on Mao's sleeve, Mao's acceptance of which signified his moral responsibility for the atrocities that these impressionable young people were soon to commit in his name. They beat, humiliated, and robbed whatever, wherever, and whomever they identified as feudal and bourgeois. They charged tens of thousands of people with sedition and treason, or just with insufficient admiration for Mao, and the courts and police went along with them, sending their victims to jail or labor camp. This horror was what Deng acknowledged in likening the Cultural Revolution to a cataclysm. Now it would all be hidden under the insipid and obscurant phrase, the decade of arduous exploration and development achievement that the mainland's education authorities were using to indoctrinate a new generation of Chinese young people. Whoever was behind the rewriting of Mao's last purge shared the Maoist mentality, the same impulse to dictate what young people should know and what they should believe. They have at their disposal the giant megaphones of their propaganda apparatus, which is, perhaps, the largest and wealthiest state machinery in history for swaying public opinion. And I, just a retiree in the twilight of her years, living quietly and obscurely in a tiny apartment in Hong Kong, felt a familiar sense of outrage and powerlessness. But even as I write these words, history has been taking place around me. In June 2019, 2 million Hong Kong people took to the streets, protesting against an extradition law that, if passed in the Legislative Council, many Hong Kongers feared, would enable Beijing to extradite anyone whom they decided had offended them. The protests effectively killed the proposed law. But more recently, China's parliament, the National People's Congress, passed a new national security law that, in letter and in spirit, many Hong Kongers argued was not consistent with the one country, two systems principle that was supposed to guide China's takeover of Hong Kong for 50 years. I, a bystander, recognized it all, having lived through so many events in China itself, during which the Communist Party demonstrated its obsession with any kind of waywardness, much less organized opposition. I was born in 1929 in Shanghai, then the Paris of the East, the greatest metropolis of China, a port city ranked with London, New York, and Amsterdam. My middle-class family was not rich, but we were well connected. My mother was a worldly, clever, socially ambitious woman. My father a banker and a member of the then-ruling Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party. I was slated to have a privileged, happy, high society life in modernizing, newly united China. My mother groomed me to be a player who could compete with other young women for eligible bachelors. She invested in my education. Starting from the age of 4, I went to an elite bilingual private school so that I became fluent and literate in both Chinese and English. But my childhood was rudely interrupted, my expectations swept away by the tremendous tidal wave that was China's mid-century history. There was the Japanese invasion of 1937, which forced my family into exile. Following that came 4 years of civil war, at the end of which Mao Zedong's communists defeated the Kuomintang, took power, then, slowly at first, more rapidly later on, enacted his radical vision, involving upheavals in the countryside, the purges of middle-class writers, professors, and thinkers in the city. I saw the denunciation meetings, the kangaroo courts, the fake investigations of fake ideological crimes, the suicides of good people, unable to endure the shame and the humiliation of it all. I had a modest job in the scenario department of China's Central Film Bureau, where I witnessed the destruction of some of my country's leading cultural lights. I saw how people coped, or tried to. I exchanged whispered views with them on what to do, how to avoid the Maoist juggernaut. An aspiring writer myself, I burned a manuscript that I had hoped would initiate a glorious literary career. I'm speaking here of the 1950s, before the worst of Mao's purges came, the so-called Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. But that came too, bringing the Maoist horror to new levels. I got married just before that to a privileged overseas Chinese man and gave birth to my son. When, despite his privileges, my husband fell prey to the Red Guard mob, we were able, with the help of China's Premier Zhou En-Lai, to move to Hong Kong, where we arrived in 1971. And now I am back, after many years in the United States, where I was a librarian assistant at the University of California, Berkeley's East Asiatic Library. I enjoy a peaceful life here in a small apartment, facing the usually calm sea. And yet, I feel history encroaching again when the party's Maoist imperative is to make everybody think the correct way. For me, the message is that, yes, many things seem different, but the political fundamentals remain the same. Mao's giant mausoleum still stands in the middle of Tiananmen Square. His portrait hangs at the top of the Great Gate leading into the Forbidden City, receiving adulation and obeisance, just as he himself did on that day more than 50 years ago, when he received his Red Guard armband. I have had the good fortune to have lived a long life as a witness to both the private and public sides of China's turbulent history. I hope in my small way to serve the cause of truth at a time when it is foolhardy to do so. To be honest, I do this in fear. I am a Hong Kong writer, and I hope to give my memories the kind of immediacy and currency that only a Hong Kong writer can. And yet, at the same time, what I have to say may make me susceptible to the rules being transplanted from the mainland, even as I write these words. I hope not. We'll see. Part 1. Before 1949. 1. My family and myself. Luck came knocking on our door when I was a small child. Father's friend, Mr. Su, had become president of the Post Bank. Even to this day, I don't know why it was called the Post Bank. Probably it was somehow connected to the National Post Office. Mr. Su invited my father to be the head of its Wuhan branch. Wuhan is a large area on the Yangtze River, consisting of 3 important cities in central China. The monthly salary was 600 silver dollars, which, in 1933, was 20 times the income of a regular middle-class household. In addition, Father would be awarded a considerable bonus at year's end. Furthermore, we lived rent-free. The bank was an imposing edifice in Hankou. The first floor was the office. The second was divided into several apartments, accommodating a few top employees' families, ours being the biggest. We had a large living room with a dining area and 4 bedrooms. Adjoining the master bedroom was Father's study. Our family was of medium size, 5 members in total. My father, Chen Shizhen, my mother, Jin Tongying, my younger brother, Yuan Zhang, my younger sister, Yuan Qi, and me. Yuan-tsung means first pearl. Not long after my father arrived at his new office, Mr. Su came to Hankou, the most important of the 3 major cities in Wuhan, to inspect the regional business. My father held a banquet in his honor. Like my father, Mr. Su had returned from the United States after having graduated from Columbia University. He was a modern type, and he enjoyed the company of modern women, also, of course, pretty women. My mother, a considerate hostess, did not disappoint him. Among her female guests, 2 were A-list celebrities. One was the wife of the mayor, as cute as a button, and another was a woman famous for her boldness. She drove a car and rode horseback. That was no mean feat for a woman at that time in China. The banquet, the first that my mother was to host, was to be held in the best restaurant at Hankou Central. And it was my first banquet as well, since I got taken along, all dressed up, when I wouldn't let my mother leave the apartment without me. Fortunately for me, taking a child to a banquet was not contrary to the prevailing etiquette. The gathering left no impression on me, nor did Mr. Su, who was reputedly a handsome man. But to my mother, it was unforgettable. It was such a glorious occasion that she was never tired of recalling it, especially later, when our family went down in the world. "You left a deep impression on Mr. Su," she told me later. "He praised you to the skies and called you a rising star. It will be a great pleasure to sit next to her, enjoying her warm, glowing smile. That's what he said to me." A casual compliment from such a VIP led Mother to see a potential in me that she hadn't glimpsed before. And this, in turn, led her to begin planning my future in earnest. She would send me to Shanghai's St. Mary's Hall, a sort of finishing school for privileged girls. She had made a survey and found that quite a few of the school's alumni had married rich, powerful men and become flowers of society. Socialites who were the life of fashionable parties, written about by popular columnists in newspapers or magazines. The textbooks, except for the one used in Chinese language class, were American, which also appealed to my mother, since English was the fashionable language then, just as French was spoken by the Tsarist elites in Russia during the 18th and 19th centuries. But St. Mary's Hall lay a few years ahead. First, Mother chose an expensive, exclusive kindergarten for me. It was called St. Joseph's Kindergarten, and I started there at the age of 4. As at St. Mary's Hall, English was the language of instruction. English culture and English etiquette the accepted standards. By all accounts, I was a good student there. "Mrs. Chen, how fate smiles on you," my mother's friends would tell her. "A good husband who earns a good salary, a good daughter who is a credit to you." My mother's dark brown eyes would light up. "I have great plans for Yuan-tsung," she would say. But Mother's luck soon took a downward turn. What caused it was Father's addiction to playing mahjong. Mahjong playing was a means of socializing with friends and potential friends, a key to what might be called networking today. It could help to make or unmake a career, and, sadly, Father's obsession with it led him to fall into the latter category. Obsessed with the game, he turned a blind eye to the maneuvering of his mahjong buddies. He didn't find out until it was too late that they had a secret agenda. They made Father feel good. They made sure Father won. And considerable sums of money could change hands at the mahjong table. And for Father, winning at the mahjong table was a welcome relief from his work at his office, where things did not go well. Everything he wanted to do, it seemed, met with obstacles, invisible and insurmountable. And so, gambling took up more and more of his time, and he paid less and less attention to his work. Whispers of disaffection reached Mother's ear. "Your father's mahjong buddies are schemers, you know. They keep your father at the mahjong table so their partners can steal without being discovered," Mother said to me. "We'll lock our doors," I said helpfully. "They don't steal from our home." Mother began to whine. "From the bank's warehouse. Some hocus pocus is going on. I don't know exactly what." Shaken, Mother warned Father that if he didn't take tough measures immediately, he would be in terrible trouble. But she talked as if to a stone wall. "You take care of the housekeeping and let me do my business," he retorted in a low and hoarse voice. As Mother continued to nag, he lowered his eyes as though dozing off. "His nose, his disastrous nose," Mother sighed. That mystified me. My father was a handsome man, and his best feature, everybody agreed, except for his wife, was his nose. It was a nose like that in a sculpted bust of a Roman senator. Whoever possessed such a nose was destined to do great things, a fortune-teller once told my mother. Father's nose, however, had a small flaw, Mother explained to me. It was high and straight, but at the end of the ridge, it went slightly lopsided. Because of that flaw, Father's great destiny would be cut short, Mother believed. Mother had kept her troubles hidden for some time, and then they came pouring out to me. Why me? I was only 6 years old. There wasn't much I could take in, even though I was a precocious child whom she called her little old lady. She needed to talk to someone who would not gloat and betray her. I was a safe bet, and I offered a sympathetic ear, which was what she really needed. "We'll fall on hard times," she predicted, distressed. She lost sleep. She had no appetite. Her doctor suggested a rest cure. She thought of visiting her parents in the south. They lived in a pastoral town, adjacent to a rice paddy and a wheat field. The country life and the change of scene would be good for her health, she felt. "When I am away, no one can restrain your father," she said. "He'll go haywire." "I'll keep an eye on father." I wished to please Mother. "He won't listen to you, a child." "I'll ask Lucky to help me." "You didn't tell Lucky what I've told you, did you?" Mother asked. "No, I didn't, and I won't." "If you don't tell her what is the trouble, how can she help you prevent it?" "I can tell Lucky that I don't like father going out at night. You'll be away and I want to keep father home." "Yes, you can do that." Lucky was our slave girl. She was 13, 7 years my senior. When she was about my age, her village had been flooded. All her family's belongings had been washed away. Desperate to get some cash to buy food for his younger children, her father begged my mother to take her. To be fair to my mother, she had the grace to refuse the selling and buying of a human being, a common practice then, although theoretically prohibited by law. She thought of giving Lucky's father some money. As she was pondering what to do, he sank to his knees and turned his angular face upward and begged. "If you don't want her, I have nowhere to turn but a brothel," he said. He was a refugee and a stranger. He earned my mother's sympathy, but not her trust. Who knew what he would do if she simply gave him some money? She couldn't exclude the possibility that Lucky might end up in a brothel anyway. But her heart went out to the little girl, who had an angelic face, and agreed to shelter her. He asked for 10 silver dollars. She gave him 20, a generous sum. "When your situation improves, come and take her back," Mother told Lucky's father. But in the intervening 7 years, he had never returned. Lucky fared much better than other slave girls in the neighborhood, who were often like punching bags to their mistresses. I knew of one slave girl who got beaten so badly that she was left with an awful swelling on her head, and a face that looked to me as large as a watermelon. Occasionally, Lucky would receive a light slap across her face when she was found stealing, which she did, but in a small way. $1 bills, coins, candies, inexpensive knickknacks, nothing of much value. Then Lucky did something less forgivable a few days before my mother went on her journey. She saw a pretty comb, a sort of headdress for old women that my mother had bought as a gift for my granny, lying on top of a vanity table. I think Lucky took it almost automatically, without thinking, a habit she seemed unable to shake off. Mother was furious. She imposed a harsh punishment. Lucky was locked up in a dim, narrow room behind the kitchen without food and water. She suffered, and I suffered along with her. We had grown up together, and a strong bond had been formed between us. Only she knew my secret fear of the dark. Every night she waited on me while I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and changed into my nightgown. Unhurried and slow-moving, I tried to keep her by my side as long as I could. When she would leave my room, she'd put out the light. Lying in the dark, I had this strange feeling that I was naked and exposed to demons hidden near me. One night, my imagination ran away with me, and I jumped out of bed and crawled under it. I would have spent the whole night there if Lucky hadn't come to do her last check on me and dragged me out. "What's the matter with you?" she asked with genuine solicitude. Shivering, I confided in her what I would have felt ashamed and humiliated admitting to my mother. "Do you want me to move into your room?" she asked. "Of course, please do," I said, joy in my heart. "This bed is big enough for 2. "I'll place my mat beside your bed." "The floor is hard, not comfortable," I objected. "I'll get used to it." "Why don't you want to share my bed?" "Because you are a young lady and I am a slave girl," she answered, and went to get her bedding. The warmth exuding from her person permeated my room. The demons were exorcised. I felt safe. She was lying so close to me. Just stretching my hand, I could touch her. "Lucky, I never look on you as a slave girl," I said, holding her hand tight in mine. "I know. You are my best friend, almost a sister." "I know." "You don't know. If you knew, you'd let me crawl under your blanket." "Then come on in," she murmured, her words sounding like a sweet lullaby. I slept through the whole night. When she was locked away, my nightmares came back. Overwhelmed, I had to go see her. I knew the key was under the seat of the kitchen god. In the middle of the night, when the whole house was asleep, I sneaked into the kitchen and took the key. When I turned it in the lock, the door opened with a sudden, loud noise that hit me like a thunderbolt. It worried me that it had awakened everyone in the whole bank building. Then I thought I heard quick steps approaching. No one came. From the open door, I saw something like a human figure huddled in a corner. I tiptoed over and found Lucky. "Lucky, it's me," I spoke in a hushed voice. She didn't respond. There was a silent moment as our eyes adjusted to the dimness. Her face was buried in her hands. I gently took one of her hands and put a small loaf of steamed bread in it. She wolfed it down, crumbs falling from her mouth. She picked them up and ate them with the dust. "Here's a bottle of water," I said. "Take it. I have to go." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She struggled to her feet and threw her arms around me, as if entreating me not to leave her in the lurch. Thinking of how she had cared for me in the dark, I too wept. "Lucky, we may get caught if I remain longer." She nodded and withdrew. On the eve of her departure, Mother allowed Lucky to walk out of her makeshift cell. She bounced back quickly. She went on a shopping spree and bought me a box of glass beads, a small bag of candy, and a butterfly hairpin. "Where did the money come from?" I asked her, suspicious. "Are you at it again?" "I saved it," she answered, grinning. With her lips slightly open and a narrow gap between her strong white front teeth, she looked like a child. "You ought to return the money," I advised. "I don't remember where I took it," she said, feeling that justified her. "Look how colorful these beads are. I'm giving them to you to make a nice necklace. If you wear it, you can fly to the moon." "Really?" I asked, intrigued. "Our cook says so. Every night before she goes to bed, she holds her necklace and murmurs her wish to it. It will guide her into dreams and fly her to heaven." Our cook was a Roman Catholic. We mistook her rosary for a necklace. But Lucky swore that she told me the truth. True or not, I wanted to believe what she said. So slowly and patiently, Lucky helped me finish several necklaces. We hoped that the more necklaces we wore, the swifter we would fly. We were properly adorned, ready to pay a visit to the heavenly place. We stood at an open window and looked up at the indigo sky. The moon illuminated the white, filmy clouds that scudded overhead, seeming to beckon. Lucky and I took a deep breath and stretched our arms up, as though opening our wings to fly. Suddenly, the ringing of a telephone intruded into our dream. We stared at each other. We knew what was up without exchanging a word. Father's mahjong buddies were calling. I dashed off and into Father's room. "Papa, where are you going?" Father paused for a minute before he replied, "To see my friends." He took a jacket off a hanger in the wardrobe. "Are you going to play mahjong?" I asked, pouting. I was his favorite child, a pearl in his palm. I could get away with it. "Could I have a little fun after a whole day's work?" Father replied with a question that he thought would quiet me. "Could we have fun together?" Of course. Let's go to your room. I'll tell you a bedtime story.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?